We're back. So we're back. We have very special guest, my dear friend Lauren Murphy. Lauren,
thanks for having me on.
I'm so pumped. I haven't seen you since the Fit Fest.
Yeah, well, I've been out here though. I've been training with John Danaher.
Oh,
out at Henzo Gracie Austin, and then I go to Roca too. So,
you know, my only interaction with Danaher was I saw him one time on West 6th Street, and he was just giving life advice to a bunch of group of dudes. Yeah,
were they just like crowded around him or something?
Yeah, it was like 4 of them, and John's on West, and he's just talking to these guys about life and
like on the street.
Yeah. He was right out by Key Bar on West, rocking his rash guard. It was like a bright blue one.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was just talking, and I was like, I know that guy. I recognize that guy from somewhere. And it clicked. I was like, that's John Danaher. And these guys were eating it up. You could tell the dudes he was talking to were like drunk.
Oh my God. Poor Danaher is like talking to a bunch of drunk dudes about life. Oh my God.
I thought it was
on the
so
street.
funny. Oh man, it was so, I would have loved to, because like I studied philosophy through college, like as a hobby. And I always got a kick out of the fact that that was his background. And then.
Yeah, it shows in the way that he teaches for sure. Like the way that he breaks down jiu-jitsu is super interesting. I mean, he talks about like specific movements to do, and he also talks about like the theory behind the movements, which I think is cool. And then I love following his Instagram. I send his Instagram posts to people all the time that aren't even involved in jiu-jitsu, because I feel like it just he breaks jiu-jitsu down in a really creative way that most people don't think of. Most people don't think of it like that. Most people think of jiu-jitsu as like a series of moves or like counter moves. They just think of it in terms of movements. And Danaher thinks about it in like a really he can definitely show moves, but he also talks about it like in a broad way where it's very like theoretical and why you would do certain things. So he talks a lot about like the push-pull action of jiu-jitsu, how jiu-jitsu relates to life, how like he won't even talk about a specific move. Like we could look up some of his posts, but it's insane the way that he breaks down jiu-jitsu. I love it. I like following it. It's made me love the sport kind of in a different aspect.
Were you following him prior to training with him too?
Oh, of course. Yeah. For sure.
And so how does that affect, like, I guess in jiu-jitsu terms, you know, when you're training with like infusing the ideology of philosophy, how does that help you in such like a match?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No.
It's more of like a life lesson?
Yeah. When I'm like, I don't think about that kind of stuff when I'm competing. I just like try to focus on what I need to be doing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, jiu-jitsu's gotten so popular out here, and the rise of it. And, you know, with how much I've been involved working with them through business and stuff, it's crazy that I've still never done it.
Yeah. You should definitely give it a try. It's pretty sweet.
I'll go with you one of these times, because the only time I actually did go and try, we were shooting a video, and I went and rolled with Nikki Rod.
Oh, yeah.
And they just slothed me around all over the place. And I almost threw up, and it was him and his brother just beating the crap out of me for like an hour.
Yeah.
I was like, damn.
I rolled with Nikki Rod one time at 10th Planet. I went over there for like their open mat. And he just destroyed me. And he's a lot like, I just was like, man, I just want to see what this is like. Like, I would love to be able to roll with like somebody that good, that famous, like see what it's like. And he just destroyed me. I feel like a lot of times big guys will like let you work, or like, I don't know, like they'll let you move, and he didn't give a fuck. He was just like, he just killed me. I was like, sweet, thanks.
Yeah, that's the first time I actually felt extremely like overpowered, and I had realized, oh man, I'm like, what's that old saying? Like, there's always someone tougher than you.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge eye opener for me, because
bigger fish.
Oh, he was so strong too. And so, yeah, I've been wanting to meet a lot more of these guys, and go do and roll around with them and try to learn the sport, because I grew up wrestling, but that is so meaningless when it comes to training with jiu-jitsu guys, because for me, it's like, oh man, I got this guy on his back, and that's usually when it's over. To them, it's like, it's just beginning.
Yeah, they're like, sweet.
Yeah, like, now this is where I want to be.
They're really good at like just really well-trained jiu-jitsu people are super good at finding like which angle they can move your limbs at that makes them the weakest, you know? So they don't even have to be that strong. Like when I roll with Helena, it's crazy because she does really basic shit to me that like you learn on your first day of jiu-jitsu, but she just does it perfectly. And she's done it for so long that she knows how to move my arms in a way that makes them very weak.
She's so talented.
She knows how to like off balance my body in a way that like I can't catch myself, you know, and it's nothing tremendous. She's not using a lot of power. She's not like doing anything like insanely complicated. She's just doing it perfectly. You know, she's done so many arm bars that like she knows exactly which angle to extend my arm at that's going to make it the weakest. And that's that's a skill I feel like you only get over time.
And she's so young too that I remember talking to her at the Oscar Blues Brewery. Christos was doing a comp there. What's his the Enigma?
Yeah.
Enigma Jiu-Jitsu, and they were doing a comp. That was the first time I met all them. And she just went in and she looks so like she's so quirky and she looks like she's having fun and then dominates.
Yeah, she's pretty unassuming. And then like
you
roll with her and it's like, oh my God, it's like rolling with a boa constrictor, you know.
She's just moving around.
Just everywhere. Yeah. I mean, I just posted about this morning, but like people have asked me before, like, is she really that good? I'm like, no. She's better.
Yeah.
You know, she's better than you think.
Yeah. She's, I mean, I wasn't really like, I'm still learning. Obviously I'm no jiu-jitsu pro. I don't know a lot of pretty much anything about it, but because of watching these guys and getting to know them personally, I'm so excited to watch ADCC this year.
Yeah. It's become very exciting. Really, it's like, Danaher, they were like the Danaher Death Squad when they were out in New York, and they really changed the game. Like John Danaher actually really changed the game, which is super interesting to think about. But they made jiu-jitsu really exciting. They made leg locks like a really integral part of the game, whereas before it was kind of ignored. And it was almost considered like too dangerous, you know?
Really?
Yeah. So the biggest jiu-jitsu organization was IBJJF. I don't even know what that stands for. Some international jiu-jitsu federation. Yeah. And they didn't allow like reaping across the legs. They didn't allow leg locks. They didn't allow like heel hooks. They just had like all these rules in place for very traditional jiu-jitsu. And the Danaher Death Squad came along and they were leg locking everybody. And they were like, well, why not? You know, these are like legit submissions, you know? And so they started killing everybody on the jiu-jitsu circuit outside of IBJJF. And so what ended up happening was these promotions started to develop that they were like submission only tournaments where it was like you have a certain time limit, any submission is allowed, and we're not going to use points. And that was kind of unheard of at the time. Like IBJJF and most other jiu-jitsu promotions had a points system, and so players would obviously play to garner points more than anything else. And the matches were kind of boring, and like people didn't love it. It wasn't a very catchy sport. And then guys like Gary Tonin and Gordon Ryan came along, and they made jiu-jitsu super exciting to watch. And people had no idea how to handle like that type of jiu-jitsu. And so they started just destroying people everywhere outside of IBJJF, and more promotions started starting, and they got bigger and bigger because they had these like stars that they could promote that it wasn't boring anymore. It was very exciting to watch guys go after submissions and get into these scrambles. And it became so big that IBJJF had to change the rules. And so that was unheard of because it's like these old fucking Brazilian jiu-jitsu farts who are like never going to change shit. And they had to like respect the fact that people were starting to leave their traditional idea of jiu-jitsu and move towards this idea of like anything goes, like anything is legal. A tap is a tap. Like we want to be excited. And then guys like Gordon just brought a lot of eyes to the sport.
I was going to say Gordon has found a way to make it is thrilling, especially when like promoting an upcoming fight is anything with like boxing or MMA, you know, like UFC or anything. Like he has a way of getting in their heads, getting people fired up to want to go watch it. Even someone like myself that might not fully understand what's happening during a match, I'm, you know, just as excited to go and watch. And I buy into the rivalries, even if I don't know who the other person he's facing is. I'm like, oh shit, well, if he's going against him. And
Same.
Then yeah, and then the crazy thing where he's like calling out how he's gonna win before he even goes out there. Like I've just never seen anything like that.
It's unbelievable, and he's won every tournament in every style that you can. Like I'm pretty sure he's won IBJJF Worlds. I'm almost positive, you know. And he's won ADCC, and he's won like every promotion that exists. He's like destroyed at like any rule set, any opponent. So it's pretty awesome, like to watch. It's a cool time to be in the sport, you know, because it has really blown up. Like I started in 2000 at the end of 2009, and there's like 3 women, you know, in the class. There were like 4 women in the state that practiced or something, and like we didn't do any leg locks or heel hooks. It was very old school jiu-jitsu. And now just to see the game has changed so much, and people are starting so young. Like kids are starting from the time they're babies. And, you know, by the time they're like Helena's age, they're just monsters. Yeah. It's so cool to be a part of that, and like to be in the MMA scene too, like to be a female in the MMA scene as it was evolving before women were even allowed in the UFC. I was fighting before Ronda Rousey. Like I was fighting before Holly Holm became an MMA fighter. Like I was fighting before women were allowed in the UFC. And so to just watch the sport kind of evolve has been really, really cool. And
continuing to. And so you actually have, on that note, a pretty unique story. And I know we talked very briefly when I first met you, and we were at the gym the day before the Fit Fest. But can you kind of share the journey from where you started? Because if I remember correctly, like you had just taken your son to a school and then got into it. And it just seemed like from that point to where you started fighting professionally was actually kind of on paper was seemingly a pretty fast track, like short, you know, thing. And so for people listening, like how did that start? So you originally took your son to a class, and then
I had never seen a UFC. I didn't know even like what jiu-jitsu was, but my son was kind of struggling and I was kind of struggling. We were like, you know, I was a really young mom, and we were just kind of on the struggle bus a little bit. And I was like, man, how can I help? Like, how can I help my son become more confident and make friends and learn some self-respect and discipline and, you know, like respect for people around him. And I was like, well, martial arts for sure, you know? And so I literally looked in the phone book and like stuck my finger in, and it landed on a Gracie Baja, which I had no idea what that was. But I was like, okay. So I called them and I said like, I'd like to bring my son in. Like, what does this look like? And they said, well, this is like submission wrestling. You know, this is mostly takes place on the ground. And like, we do things like, you know, chokes and joint locks and things like that. And I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I'm into that. Like, I was like, I kind of was thinking more like punching some things or kicking. And the woman on the phone, it was the most brilliant thing. She said, well, you know, honestly, most fights end up on the ground. And she said that, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know, that's so true. Like any YouTube video I've ever seen or like bar fight I've ever seen, it's like people fall over and then they're on the ground. And wouldn't it be useful to know how to fight down, you know, fight down there? She was like, yeah, 90% of fights end up on the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh, that it just made so much sense to me. So I took my son in, we went to like a kids class or something. And I was like, you know, just to support you, I'm going to take the class. I took like the adult class. And I just loved it. I don't know. We came out of there. I was like, that's awesome. But at the time, I was such a different person, you know, like I'd never played a sport before. I smoked like a pack of cigarettes every day, and I had for 10 years. Like I was a heavy smoker. I was taking a lot of pills. I struggled with my alcohol use. Like I said, we were struggling, man. And he was struggling too, I'm sure, because of all those things going on at home. And so anyway, I just fell in love with it. Like I started going all the time. I was like 3 times a week, and then 5 times a week. And then every day I was going to jiu-jitsu, and I just loved like wrestling around. And people would tell me in the class, they're like, you're so fucking strong. Like, you know, like, do you know how strong you are? And I was really competitive, and this is all stuff that's like new to me. And he hated it. Max hated it. He was like, I don't want to go back. But I was like, cool, I'm going to keep going. And I remember thinking like, you know, like you could do this for a year and have a year's worth of skills behind you, or a year from now you could have nothing and be in the exact same place you are right now. So why not, you know, a year from now, at least have a year of skill behind you. And it gave me a lot of purpose, and it gave me a lot of motivation. And so you know, just over time, like I quit smoking and I wanted to like get sober. And there was a MMA team that worked out at that gym, and they would practice after the jiu-jitsu class. And so like I would do jiu-jitsu, and then I would be like sitting on the bleachers and like watching them warm up. And it was, you know, it was in Alaska, and it was this tiny little fight team in Alaska. And to me, they were like superstars. They were like the most interesting, biggest people I'd ever seen in my life. And I just could not imagine what that would be like to be in a fist fight, you know. And some of them had like been on TV, and like they were part of this like local promotion called Alaska Fighting Championship. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I wonder if I could ever do something like that. Like I was so afraid of physical confrontation and physical violence that a lot of times I let people kind of push me around and bully me because I was so afraid to get into a physical fight with people that I ended up like getting walked on a lot, you know? And I hated that. Yeah. But I had no confidence in myself. And so anyway, there was a coach there that was like, hey, like, you're going to be really good. He was like, you should go work out with the MMA team. Like, you're strong and you're tough, and like you're an athlete. I know you don't know that, but like you are. And so you should go work out with the MMA team. And I was like, okay. Like I was like, all right. And so he kind of tricked me into it. He was like, meet me here on Saturday at 2:00. I'll hold mitts for you. I was like, okay. And so I went Saturday at 2:00, and he didn't show up. But like that was the time the MMA team practiced though. Yeah. And so they were all there, and the coach there knew I was coming, and he was like, get on the mat. Like, and it was really hard. It was all men. There had been one or two females that had worked out with them in the past, but like those were really experienced females, you know? And so anyway, the guys on that team did not love me being there. Like they didn't want a really inexperienced girl working out with them, asking questions, not knowing what to do. You know what I mean? And so they really tried hard to fucking get me off the mat. Like none of them wanted to partner up with me. And like, it was humiliating. They beat me up a couple times. And, I don't know. I just remember it, instead of like it making me want to leave, I was like, I'm going to fucking get better. I'm going to come back and whoop your ass one of these days. You know, like I didn't have any idea what that would take, but I was like, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to come back and kick your ass. And, I ended up taking a fight, and I won that fight in like 17 seconds. Like I knocked this chick out, and I was terrified, but also I was like, I'm going to win. Yeah. I don't care what happens. I'm going to win. And that garnered me a little bit of respect. And right after that happened, a new coach took over the MMA team, and he was awesome. And he was all about like just training anybody that would work hard, which I definitely was a hard worker. And, that really changed the game for me. In fact, that coach wrote to me like yesterday, and he was like, dude, do you remember when we started working together? He was like, I'm trying to like put all the pieces together. I don't know. He might be like writing a book or something, or doing speaker. I don't know. But he was like, remember it was like the 1920s or some shit. Like nobody wanted to train a female, you know? He was like one of the first that was willing to train a female. And I was like, yeah. And I just started thinking about it. Like that dude really changed my life actually, because he treated me like I was just anybody else that wanted to fight and work hard. And so then I really did become like an accepted part of the team. And those guys that were assholes to me, like they kind of showed themselves out, really. They like ended up leaving. You know how it is, like hard work really weeds out a lot of people. And previously those guys had kind of been allowed to do whatever they wanted. They could just practice any way they wanted.
No accountability.
No accountability. Yeah. So if they were really good boxers, they would just box all day long, you know, or if they were really good wrestlers, they just wanted to wrestle. There was no coach there making them do the uncomfortable shit. And so this guy named Pat Applegate took over the team, and he was basically like, hey, we're going to work hard on this team. If you're a hard worker, you can stay. And he knew already, he'd grown up wrestling, that if you make people work hard, they tend to weed themselves out. Yep. And it sure did, man. A lot of those guys showed themselves the door, and they didn't come back. And what we were left with was a team of really hardworking, accepting people that emulated the coach. You know, that kind of stuff starts at the top. And so he really put together a team in this tiny little gym in Alaska that was amazing. Like 4 of us ended up going to the UFC. 2 of us have fought for world titles. Like it really became something special in that room once Pat Applegate took over.
And man, no, I love seeing stories where it's like hard work pays off, and I'm glad those guys weed themselves out, because I think you nailed it. You know, I went through it too, because I played college ball, and I used to notice that whenever someone that didn't work as hard felt like there was an actual hard worker in the room, and it threatened their like routine and their, you know, this idea that they had that they were the best because, you know, they might have just been athletically gifted. But as soon as someone came in that outworked them, they always try to degrade that person.
Yeah.
And I was someone that did not have just, you know, genetics, you know, the athletic gift of, you know, just showing up and being, you know, pretty good. I always had to work like 3 times as hard just to keep up. And when I did get to college, I saw a difference though, because in high school I got shit on all the time, but then when I got to college, all of a sudden I was being uplifted by all these great athletes, and that's why we won. We never lost. Like the first school I was at, we went undefeated, won the junior college national title. And yeah, it's just crazy to me that that exists in athletic environments, but
everywhere too. Like egos are big, you know, and nobody likes to have their ego threatened. And it's almost like people subconsciously, even coaches, I've met some really, really great coaches in my life. And I've also met some really shitty ones that I would, you know, the only thing I'm taking from them is what not to do.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, it starts at the top though. And that's like a coach really does control the attitude of the whole room, you know. And so if you have a coach that, you know, values certain things like hard work and, you know, persistence and consistency and lifting each other up, then you're going to have a team that's like that. And if you have a coach that values like winning and looking good and, you know, saving your ego, then you're going to have a bunch of athletes that act like that.
Did you ever notice like how did it dwindle out the more you started to kind of rise up the ranks and go into more professional environments, or was it always just kind of there? As far as egos go and people trying to... No,
it's always there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's always there. And I will say at Roca, I don't see that very often, if ever. Like, I'm not at Roca every day. And so I wouldn't even say that I'm like part of the team there. I would say I'm just lucky enough to train there. But from what I've seen, the athletes there are like they just want to work hard. Yeah. They just want to learn and do their best. And I think that a lot of that is because of Danaher. And, like, he's very picky about who comes into the room. And, like, I think you really have to show that you're able to contribute in some way, you know, for him to invite you in there. But, yeah, I've trained in, like, some other really high-level rooms. And even, like, some of the most famous MMA coaches in the world are, like, lauded very loudly publicly, and I'm like, I don't know, I've been on their team, and behind closed doors it's a different story, you know, than what the public sees. And so it's everywhere. It's all over the high levels. And I think you do have to have like a certain amount of ego to compete at a high level. Yeah, you definitely have to like be confident in yourself, and you have to be a believer, and you have to be kind of a type alpha personality to compete at a very, very high level.
And I think it's just in life too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just being able to temper that with some humility and some common sense. And like, I think that everybody needs like a good coach to help them through that, or somebody to help balance them out. Like, surely we can't just live off of our own thoughts and you know.
Yeah, I audit myself often, but you know, I came from the more of a background of, I always never felt good enough, and I always felt like I had to prove something. But, you know, as I started to rack up wins just in life and start accomplishing things that people told me I couldn't, you do almost have to adopt a certain bit of like narcissism to a very small level, to where you remind yourself like, fuck them. Like, I don't need that person's approval, or like, I'm better than what they're trying to like, you know, degrade me to, and things like that. And, you know, adopt an ego, or else you do start to, you know, you will start to tell yourself like, believe what they're saying and things like that.
Right.
And so,
yeah, the more successful you become, the more haters you get. And you just have to be super careful that you yourself do not become one of them.
Absolutely.
You know, but there's a big difference. Like, confidence is one thing, but arrogance is another.
Well, I used to have a coach that said, you are who you hang out with.
Yes.
And I always have tried to make sure that I didn't surround myself with yes men. You know, I like people in the room. You know, I like having people that call me out if I'm fucking up, because I'm nowhere near perfect. And I do, you know, I'm human. I react to things with emotion sometimes. Like, I get impulsive. Sometimes I get either really overconfident or really discouraged, where I just want to quit and give up on everything. And so you have to have people that both remind you how far you've come, but also remind you like where you came from, and that, you know, don't get too full of yourself. And I've seen a lot of athletes almost ruin themselves because of they got an overinflated ego.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I'd say like the biggest thing that's held me back in my career is probably lack of confidence. I wish I'd been a more confident athlete. Oh yes, for sure. That's probably one of the biggest things that if I could like go back and change about like younger Lauren is like, I would be like, man, just believe in yourself a little bit more. I didn't know about like how as you get bigger, people are going to hate you more. I didn't know that.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah. And so I just thought like, I thought they were right, or I've worked with coaches that thought I wasn't any good, and they just would, they like, I would believe them, and I've seen other athletes that didn't fall for that. So like Sean O'Malley is always kind of my go-to for this. Like I came up with Sean, we both trained at the lab. Even he is like an amateur when he came, and like,
I love Sean O'Malley.
He's the man. And, we are just lucky enough to like get to know him pretty well, and his coach Tim as well. Like we're really big fans of Tim and Sean. And,
does Tim coach up in Kalispell, Montana?
Maybe when he's there, but he owns a gym in Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
So I think he's at his gym probably all the time. But Sean always had like an amazing amount of confidence, man. And he had people around him that would try to break him down and tell him like, hey, you're not as good as you think you are. And like, that style of striking isn't going to work. Like you have to keep your hands up and don't switch stances. And like, you're just overconfident. And he was always like, fuck you, I'm good. know? And I wish I had had a dose of that, because I was a big believer like, oh, I'm no good, But you couldn't tell Sean that for shit. But I think the thing was that he never felt like he was so good that he didn't have to work hard. He was never so good that like, he picked his coaches carefully. He works with Tinquinho Mendez, and he works with Tim Welch. And those guys are very, very good at what they do. And Sean will listen to them and he'll do what they say. And I think he does take criticism from them, but he doesn't take criticism from everybody, And so that's, to me, it's like, I wish I had had that kind of like foresight and sense when I started, because I took criticism from anybody that would give it to me, and like kind of let myself agree with it and really let myself be unconfident throughout a lot of my career. And just through experience and working with like a sports psychologist and things like that, I've grown more confident, but it's been some work, and it's
oh yeah. I remember when I first met you, I was intimidated. You came in and you were like, what are we doing here? What's going on?
What's going on?
It took a minute, and then we just broed out after that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, but I never would have guessed that when I first met you. Like, you walked in and you look like, I'm here.
Like ready for business.
Yeah. And so, and I mean, to be fair, it was a little out of your element being like this powerlifting gym.
Yeah.
There's no mixed martial arts around it all. And so but you handled it well, but to your point though, I couldn't agree more. I think the hardest thing for me was growing up, I was always a people pleaser. So whenever I did receive criticism, I always tried to take that into account. And I wish I had Sean's ability to be like, nah, which is something I later adopted, but it always just kind of pulls at you.
Yeah. And he just was smart about who he did take criticism from, it's like, he took criticism from people that were qualified to give it.
Yeah.
It's
always the unqualified ones that have the most to say.
That's exactly right. And there's been a couple times where I've gotten like haters on my Twitter or on my Facebook or whatever. And a couple times I just have a couple stories of like, tracking them down.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Them. Yeah, I found a couple of them.
Yeah.
And it's always the same song and dance. It's always some like young white belt dude that like has no athletic ability, that's just a hater behind his computer. It's literally never been somebody that's as big as it's like the Wizard of Oz, he's got like this big fucking bullhorn, which is the internet, and he's like saying all this shit about what a piece of shit I am. And then when you pull back the curtain, it's literally like some little dude,
some old man in a thing,
that's just a nobody.
Can you imagine that shit? Just talking shit to a fighter, and then they show up and they're like,
dude, it's happened a couple times, like where I'm like, found the guy. But one time I was doing like a meet and greet, And Benson Henderson had told me a long time ago at the lab, he was like, you know, those people that hate on you, those are the first people to ask you for a fucking autograph.
Yep.
He was like, those are the people in line, and they're the first ones to ask you for an autograph. And I was like, are you sure? You know? And he was like, 100%. Years later, I was doing a meet and greet at a Little Woodrow's, actually. And
hell yeah.
Yeah, I love Little Woodrow's.
I do too, yeah.
And so this guy showed up. He like waited in line. He shows up and he like shakes my hand. We take a picture and he's like, hey, I was talking shit to you on Twitter a while back, and like I just wanted to see if you'd answer me. But do you remember I was like talking shit to you? And I was like, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
What were you doing? And I went and I looked up like what he had said, and it was something rude, you know, just something shitty. And I took a picture with him and I posted it on my Twitter, and I was like, Ben, you were right. Like, these people are the first ones to ask for an autograph. That's crazy to me that he would like talk shit to me and then stand in line and ask for a fucking autograph.
Tell you.
And then tell me like he
Hey,
thought it was so
rude
cool.
to you?
Yeah, he thought it was so awesome. Like, he thought we had like a thing because of it. And I'm like, the only thing we have is I think you're a fucking prick. You know, like
I'm doing this because I'm a professional, but I would rather knock you out. Yeah. Do you remember, God, I can't remember his name. He's a UFC commentator, but someone told him like, stick to commentating, like fight career's over. And he's like, I bet you wouldn't say that to me in person. And the guy was like, yeah, you'd kick my ass. That's why I said it on Twitter. He's like, fair enough. Yeah.
It's Paul Felder.
Yeah, Paul Felder. Yeah. I always got such a kick out of that because at least that guy owned it.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I found like there was a guy that was leaving comments on my Instagram about like just how shitty of a fighter I am and blah, blah, blah. And like I found him. Just I Googled his username and did like a little detective work. And it turned out this guy is like in the military, which my husband's in the military. You know what I mean? And he's like, anyway, he's like literally a band nerd in the military. He like plays the trumpet or something for like an army band. And so I remember typing his real name and being like, hey, motherfucker, like I know who you are, you know, and I'll fucking find you, you know? And he deleted everything and he wrote to me and he was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I was just trying to get a response. And, you know, it's like, what? Well, why don't you just say something nice?
Yeah.
That would probably get you a better response than me, like literally threatening you. And like his commanding officer wrote to me and was like, hey, we're not gonna, you know, we don't tolerate like threats against our military. And I was like, hey brother, if your military is gonna pick a fight with a fighter, like what do you think's gonna happen? Like,
Avatar isn't a diet. It's not a cleanse, detox, or shortcut. It's a revolutionary new way of eating. With Avatar, nutrition is tailored specifically for you. You'll check in every week to update us on your progress, and the system changes your nutrition to match. With simple goals to hit, you're right on track every week for sustainable, unstoppable progress. Tracking your diet becomes part of your lifestyle. You enter what you eat, and Avatar counts the protein, carbs, and fat. The macros count down with every meal, and all you have to do is zero them out. We make it simple. No matter how hectic your day gets, Avatar lets you stay flexible. You can eat what you want. As long as you hit your targets, you'll still reach your goal. No system is easier to use. And you're not in it alone. Real people are ready to answer your questions whenever you need. Our community is thousands strong and growing. Whether you're 18 or 80, whether you're ready or not, we've got your back. This isn't a diet. This is a way of life. Eat what you want. Feel great about it. Period. Forever starts here. Welcome to the revolution.
We don't tolerate. Well, you shouldn't tolerate his behavior then.
yeah, and they don't. He was like, we will take remedial action to fix this. It was like, good. I hope that dude fucking got demoted. I hope, you know what I mean? Like, don't hide behind your keyboard. I don't.
It's gotten outrageous, but I've also got, like, I was having this conversation the other day where, you know, I was getting pretty discouraged with all the stuff I'm trying to build with the Austin fitness community and the stuff moving forward. And it's just none of it gets recognition, whether it's social media censorship, you know, or just low engagement, things like that. And what I started to realize is negativity gets engagement. Ugh. There's not enough, you know, positive feedback because there's no reward to it, even though it's the most rewarding feeling in the world when you have a positive encounter with someone. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, like, we all feel inclined to reward, and I mean reward by responding to negative things, such as like, you know, guys that talk shit to you in your comments, or, you know, nasty messages that I'll get from people. And I always feel inclined to get in a confrontation, argue with them.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is. I wonder why we're so attracted to negativity. Cause even with like Gordon Ryan, you know, he'll put something up, calling someone out, something pretty funny, and then his comments will fill up. And I'll see a bunch of people like, you're the king, you're this and this, but one person's like, fuck you. And then he gets into a fight with them. And I'm like, we got to start rewarding, you know, positive things.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah. I wonder what we could change the culture, you know, if we just start responding to the nice comments and like deleting the shitty ones.
Yeah. Or just not even responding to negativity. Cause for me, that was the tough change was, you know, my initial response, my human initial response is to tell someone to go fuck themselves. Like, you know, with all the stuff that I've had to overcome, and you know, you likewise, the first thing you want to do is tell someone to fuck off when they try to discredit you or degrade you. And I have always been dismissive of I don't know how to handle when people give me compliments. I kind of just freeze up. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, our natural response is to be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but when someone negative, I'm all in. I'm I'll fight with you all day. I love it. But I think that's a bizarre thing. And, you know, so because you're still actively fighting, correct? And so with all that, how do you prepare for a fight, both like physically and mentally? You know, what's like a typical like training regimen going in, both physically and mentally?
That's a really good question. So for me, lately in my last couple fight camps, I've gone to Denver because they have a really good women's team up there, and I like training with women. Earlier in my career, I did a lot of training with men because there just wasn't a lot of women. But also the theory it was like, hey, if I'm sparring with men and working with men, then a female should be no problem. And I would walk into the cage and I would be like, oh yeah, like I got this. She's not who I've been training with. Over time though, that I started to feel better training with women because it was more realistic. And so you can get into like realistic scrambles. You can use all your strength on a female and have it like work, you know, just like it would in a fight. But with a man, they have to go easier. Otherwise, they would just destroy you all the time, you know? And so I started training with more women and really enjoying that because it was just a lot closer to what I was actually going to experience. And training with men started to like break my confidence a little bit. And it just got harder to find like male training partners that were appropriately sized and could go at an appropriate pace that would emulate my opponent. Whereas I could just find now that the sport's big enough that I can train with females. So I go out to Denver, which is really good for my cardio. There's a coach out there named Carrington. Elevation. Yeah, and there's a coach out there named Carrington Banks who I just adore. I think he's one of the best coaches I've ever worked with. And they have a really big women's team. We're all around the same size and, around the same skill level and same experience level. And so I get really, really good rounds up there. And then I'll work out. It just depends. If I have a super hard workout, like hard sparring, usually I'll do hard sparring twice a week. And that'll be like generally my only workout of that day. Other days, if I'm doing conditioning and some lighter work or like some like jujitsu or whatever, hitting mitts, then I'll do like 2 to 3 workouts in a day. So it ends up being like somewhere 3 to 4 hours a day of like training. And then I definitely need to like really mind my sleep. That's a big one. So I take a lot of naps. I make time to take a lot of naps. My nutrition is huge because it's like we're cutting our calories, but we're working out more. And so in order to feel good for training sessions, it's gotten to be like a pretty exact science about like, okay, I can have this many servings of carbs at this time. I can have this many servings of like protein, fruit, fat, whatever. And really measuring out like making sure that my meals correspond with how hard my training sessions are and that I'm like feeling okay. Now I take supplements. I never used to take supplements like back in the day, but now I'm big on like beta-alanine and get the creatine. The tingles. Yeah, yep. And protein's a big one because it's like low cal, but it really, really helps like with muscle soreness and stuff. And you doing all the other new
buzz stuff like the cold plunges?
I love a good ice bath.
I've still never done one.
Oh my God, ice baths are,
I've done ice baths, but the cold plunge I haven't.
Yeah. So either I think of them as the same,
Yeah.
but like, like 3 to 5 to 7 minutes in a cold plunge or an ice bath just does so much for soreness and for sleep. I swim a lot. That's a lot of my conditioning is swimming a lot. And, I'm really strong for like my size and my division. That's just like God's gift to me. It was making me strong. And so I do lift, but I do like some Olympic lifting to help like with my speed. You know what I mean? Like I do like snatches and cleans and stuff, like lightweight, but I try to do it fast and explosively. And so that helps me stay like fast and strong. And then, we'll taper off as it gets closer to the fight. And yeah, just minding my weight a lot. There was something else I was going to say about my camps. Oh, you asked about the mental preparation.
Yeah, because, we're talking about how, we respond differently to criticism and negativity. And, there's so much that goes building up to a fight where you get all these reporters and stuff that just bring up irrelevant shit, but I hate it too. It's like, or they're trying to like start stuff just to make a story, and
they need headlines, man. They'll do anything for a headline.
I always will watch random stuff that Ariel does, and I'm like, dude. I mean, a lot of times he's actually on par with some stuff, but sometimes I'm like, you're just trying to manufacture a story and start some shit.
Because people love negativity and they love a good beef and they want they want the craziness. And I've actually had like websites like publish fake headlines about me. It's insane. I've seen that.
It's crazy that there's no accountability for that.
It
blows my mind.
Man, I called out this reporter one time. He published a headline that was like so misleading about chopped up 2 different sentences and put them together to make a headline. And he had structured it in just a way that it read in a certain way, but he couldn't be sued for it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so I remember making a huge deal out of it. And I was like, it was for MMAfighting.com. I was like, I'm never going to do an interview with you again. I hope you're fucking happy. I posted about it. And so this dude apologized to me on his personal Twitter, which 11 people follow. It was like his mom liked it, and like one of his friends was like, "Good job."
Bunch of bots.
And but they published this headline to like 2 million followers or 1 million or whatever it was. And so I'm like, how are you going to give me my fucking reputation back? Yeah. How are you going to undo this damage? And they can't, and they're not interested either.
And no one's doing retractions anymore.
Yeah.
No one ever wants to be wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's what just my approach to whenever I meet with people, it's like when I first met you too. One of the first things that I was telling you going into the Fit Fest and stuff was like, I always want things to be mutually beneficial. I recognize that a lot of these athletes, like guys with Boss and stuff, they don't really need me. And that's how I feel with a lot of these reporters is these pro athletes, they don't need you. Like they're going to go fight regardless. They're going to get paid regardless. They don't need you. So it blows my mind that they would just try to tarnish their reputation for clickbait.
Yeah.
When it's like, you could probably do a lot more if you focus on building a relationship with them, finding ways to help them out, things like that. But no, they want that quick fix, that little dopamine rush of getting all these people. And I just can't stand it. I'll never take that approach to really anything I do.
Yeah.
And it's just so bizarre to watch. It's like,
Ryan Holiday wrote a really good book about it. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I want to look it up because Ryan Holiday is an awesome author. He wrote Ego is the Enemy and I think Stillness is the Key and something like that. But he's written some really awesome stuff, and he wrote a book specifically about that, about how media and the press, they wield so much power and how they will do anything to get a fucking headline. And they'll just publish one little piece of something you said just to get people, literally just to get a click. And so that is kind of hard to deal with. And it really soured my, attitude towards the media. Really since the beginning of my career, the media has not been my friend. I didn't have the look of somebody that they would want to push and promote. When I first started fighting, I wasn't even sober yet. And by the time I got to a big world stage, I fought for a world championship, I had been sober for 2 years. So that's nothing in the big scheme of things, and just a little rough around the edges, and just not somebody that they wanted to like put up on a pedestal and be like, hey, check this chick out, you know?
Which to me is crazy, because that's more inspiring and something for people to look up to than just someone that
They would have loved it if I had looked like a supermodel, but I'm like, no, you don't live a life like mine and come out of it looking like a supermodel. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? That's just, it's never been my focus ever. And so that was like a little heartbreaking to hear, because I love my story. I love what I've done. I love where I came from.
Yeah.
I think I've overcome more than most people in this sport. I think I've gone, like, if we're talking about distance covered, I don't know of an athlete that's covered more distance than me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, you had to start in Alaska.
Yeah, and
at the bottom.
having never been an athlete. It's not like I grew up wrestling, or like I didn't even do track or like anything, you know, I didn't do shit.
To fight on the biggest stage that, you know, every fighter wants to fight on. And I think it's a shame that you don't get more recognition, because it was Betsy over at Black Widow MMA that introduced me to you. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to have this person out here. And she was like, we have the same striking coach. And I said, I don't care. I was like, I see what, I was like, I'm seeing their story. And I remember putting together the highlights for, promotional stuff. And I remember I was going to send it to you as a joke, but I didn't like know you that well yet. But I remember finding a clip and you were yelling at Eddie Alvarez.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
My name's Lauren.
Yeah, that's like so famous now, but it's like we just didn't get along. Like, we just did not get along. His personality type and my personality type are such that we are like magnets that are just
You seem to try to take the mature approach. You're like, this isn't clicking. I'm trying to go. And then, you know, reality TV kicks in and it's like.
Yeah, but it was so good for me too in the long run, because like, I think when I started that show, like I said, I really struggled with like the difference between confidence and arrogance, and having low self-esteem and being humble. Like, you know, there's lines between those, and I really blurred them a lot. And so I couldn't figure out how to be humble without hating myself, and how to be confident without being arrogant. Like, I didn't really know. And so I kind of had a very like unbalanced attitude at that time. And it showed. I was super negative a lot. Like, I remember that being on The Ultimate Fighter, and me and another girl named Emily Whitmire, we would just get together and just bitch all day long. And you're like mic'd up the whole time. And so the producers in the back were probably like, oh my fucking God, why won't this bitch just stop complaining? And I just literally didn't know. Right. And so, anyway, all that fallout happened with Eddie Alvarez. And I think the producers were like, perfect. We're going to make this chick the villain, like the heel of the season, which can be a really valuable spot to put somebody in. But I didn't know, you know, I just didn't know. And anyway, I like switched teams, which I guess is a big deal. I don't know. I'm like, it's a fucking game show, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then I got to work with Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's awesome. And he really, like, without even trying, just by his example, he showed me how to be positive, how to stay in the moment. He would end every practice where we would all put our hands in the middle, and he would say, okay, everybody, attitude on 3, and 1, 2, 3, attitude. Yeah. And I was like, that is so interesting. And it just made me realize, like, dude, my attitude is my choice, like, which I had never really taken to heart before, but it's true. Like, our attitude is always in our control. Nobody can ever take it from us. Nobody gets to control it but us. And it decides more than anything else the way that our life turns out. And I was like, I fucking really need to change my attitude. And so when I got off of The Ultimate Fighter, I was really villainized that season, which was really hard to go through for me. It was like very heartbreaking.
You never saw yourself as like the heel or like the villain?
I did. I did, but I didn't like it. I was like, like, cause I had made a lot, like all the other women on the show really liked me. Like when people meet me, they tend to like me, but if you just broadcast like all the shitty things I've done,
anybody, you can make anybody look bad.
Like, yeah, exactly. And so they film you for 24 hours a day. And then like any stupid thing you say, they put that on air, or like, and you know, everybody says stupid shit, but just not everybody made the cut to be put on air. And so it was a hard thing to go through, but it's also like, I don't know if I would have changed my attitude any other way. And so after that, I really, like, I started meditating, and I started really just trying to like be present and have a better attitude and be more positive. And it changed my whole life. You know, things really started like the snowball effect. Like things just got better and better after that, honestly. You know, being on The Ultimate Fighter, like in some ways it like put a shackle on my career that I could never quite get rid of, but like it also taught me a really valuable life lesson. And so just things like that are like, I didn't really, I had no idea coming up that would be like what happened, but it is. That's my story now. And so I'm happy to share that with other athletes, like as they're coming up, because I see other athletes that struggle the same way I did. And I get to coach other, especially females coming up where they're like unconfident and they don't understand what it means to have a good attitude. And it's like, I get to like be an example for them. And so now whenever I lead a practice, and especially like at Deep End Fitness, whenever I coach a Deep End Fitness session, we always end the sessions by putting our hands in the middle and being like, okay, the one thing that we always have with us, nobody can ever take it from us. We're always in control of it. And it decides more than anything else the way our life turns out is our own attitude. So let's make sure it's a good one, attitude on 3, let's go. And, yep. And I hope that like that sticks with people the way it stuck with me. And so anyway, shout out to Justin Gaethje. He probably has no idea like what effect he had on my life, but like that, it's true. Like he taught me so much, and he didn't even sit me down and talk to me about it. He just showed me through his example.
A positive attitude is so contagious though. Like you ever notice when you're just around someone that's so genuinely upbeat and happy, like you feel it, like all of a sudden you're upbeat and happy,
and people love to be around them, and people are drawn to people like that, and they're like, dude, did you hang out with Josh today? He's the shit, and it's like because of that. Or like people could be like, oh my god, like Josh is on his way here, we got shit to do, I think.
I mean, I have some friends that I was just having this conversation with my best friend yesterday, and like I'm at a point now where I'm so busy that I just can't, I don't have the patience or the tolerance to be around someone who's so draining. Yeah. And negativity is so draining when you're around someone who's just always just bitching about something, or their life sucks or this or that. And the one thing I've noticed is they're never interested in solutions. Yeah. They're always just complaining. And I'm like, have you tried this? Like, no. And I'm just like,
that won't work because I can't do that because I don't think that's going to happen because, and it's like, well, cool.
Yeah. Have fun being fucking miserable there. Yeah.
Better not even try, I guess.
Well, we have this saying, because we used to give my dad shit. He would always like overreact over something so small. So we'd always be like, well, burn the house down then. And that would be what we would say, because he would get so worked up about something so, minuscule, just something so tiny. And, just burn the house down. I guess it's not even.
Fuck it.
Yeah. So, attitude really does change the game. It can improve things so many ways, and and it's okay to be bummed out sometimes. It's okay to be disappointed, but you can't let those things anchor you down forever.
Yeah, you can't live there, and you can't experience it before it even happened. Yeah. Like you can't put yourself through it before the thing has even happened. Otherwise, it's literally a waste of time and energy. And so you're right that a lot of us do that. But it's like you said, you are who you hang with. It's important to be around people that are like, hey man, like let's pick it up, or have a coach that can walk you through that. Like, my husband often reminds me, he's like, hey, let's not worry about this right now if it hasn't even happened yet, and I'll be like, okay, you're right. Like,
yeah. Today's episode was brought to you by Austin Barbell. More than just a gym, a barbell club. Austin Barbell is open to aspiring athletes of all skill levels. They offer an in-person group format training classes for any skill level. This includes beginners without experience, just beginning strength training, or advanced athletes looking to gain a competitive edge. Austin Barbell's objective is to grow the sport of Olympic weightlifting and make it accessible to everyone. They have a scaled approach to strength training. I've personally seen these athletes in action, and their Ollie lifting strength program is 100% ideal for all athletes, including CrossFit, powerlifting, and bodybuilding. Train alongside national competitors and beginner athletes in a supportive team environment. Austin Barbell has 2 locations in North and South Austin. For more information, go to www.austinbarbell.com or check them out on Instagram at Austin Barbell. Today's episode is brought to you by ReGen Health and Wellness. The team at ReGen Health and Wellness is devoted to helping patients revitalize, repair, and renew the optimal blueprint of yourself. They provide an individualized and concierge model of healthcare, empowering patients to optimize their health span and overall quality of life. It's said no one can escape father time, but almost everyone can make the conscious decision and commit to living better and healthier lives. It begins with a mindset. They offer both in-clinic and telemedicine consultations. So whether you're due for a routine checkup or struggling to hit your health and fitness goals, go online or give them a call to schedule your appointment today. I sometimes whenever I'm upset, I need to vent, but it's important that when I'm venting, I'm not looking for a solution. I just need to get something off my chest. But, you know, with that in mind too, with a mindset, how do you handle, you know, setbacks or losses in like your career, and like what motivates you to come back stronger? Because losing can suck, especially on a big stage like that. I can't even fathom it.
It's like the worst thing in the world. Yeah. I mean, we always talk about it. Like there's an expression that goes around like the fight community, and it's like the highest highs and the lowest lows. And that's so true. You know, when you win a fight, you feel like you're the best motherfucker that's ever lived, and like nobody could bring you down, and life is so good. And it's true, man. It's the best feeling ever. And when you lose, it's like, man, you feel like you're the worst piece of shit that's ever walked the face of the earth, and everybody hates you, and like you don't deserve to be there. But honestly, it's just experience. Like just experience is super key in that, and learning how to deal with losses. And I always think to myself, like, okay, this is what we signed up for. Like, this is the price athletes pay to do what we do. And sometimes you have to eat crow and you know, eat humble pie. But I know that when my career's over, like looking back, I'm going to be so glad that I did it. And I know that, you know, just through experience, I know that like the thing that is the best for handling a loss is going back out there and getting a win. Yeah. You know, nothing helps the burn of a loss, like learning from it, coming back, applying those lessons and winning. It's like, then you could actually be grateful for that loss for teaching you something. But if you can't do that, if you just like, blame everybody else, or if you can't take anything away from it, then you're bound to repeat it, you know? And so I think that's part of it too, is making sure that you don't repeat those same mistakes that led to that. And trying to kind of step back and look at everything from like a bird's eye view. You know, when you're in the middle of it, it's very hard to see. But if you step back and take a look and you're like, okay, like I've won more than I've lost. You know, I've had a great career. Like I've gotten to do this, that, and the next thing. And this is going to help me in the future. That all helps. But yeah, there's no heart. Like losing hurts, and it's supposed to hurt. You know, it's supposed to. Like I said, Banks is one of the best coaches I ever had. And he told me some really valuable things after I lost to Jessica Andrade. And that was a hard loss. I got 30-25 on pay-per-view, which is like a fucking brutal beating, you know? And it hurt a lot. And I knew I hadn't like performed to the best of my ability. I knew that like some part of me had like just not shown up that night, which all athletes I think go through at some point in their career. But one of the first things he said was, because I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if I embarrassed you. Like, I'm so sorry. And he was like, no, Lauren. He was like, if anything, I embarrassed myself. He was like, it's on me as your coach to have you prepared for these fights. And clearly I didn't do my duty as a coach in having you prepared for this. And I was like, oh shit, like no coach has ever like taken accountability like that. And clearly, I mean, obviously I wasn't like, yeah, Banks, it's your fault. But it just felt good to have somebody on the team share that responsibility.
Like you didn't have to take it all yourself.
Yes. And the coach that coached with him was like, that was terrible. Like he was like, you fucked up. Like that's the worst way somebody can lose a fight. Like he was in my ass about it, just giving me all the blame, you know. Banks was happy to share that as a team. And that for me was a big lesson. And then the second thing that he said was that like, you know, this, you know, losses like this are supposed to hurt. He was like, I encourage you to take this feeling and hold on to this feeling and remember this feeling so that it motivates you to work harder next time and fix these mistakes. He was like, it is supposed to feel like this. And that was another thing nobody had ever really said to me before. Usually people are like, oh, don't worry, it'll be okay. You'll come back stronger, and like, we're going to come back, blah, blah, blah. But for him to be like, it is supposed to feel like this, and you should feel like this. Like, not because you're a piece of shit, but because losing is supposed to hurt so that we don't accept it. I was like, oh,
it's a good way to look at it.
You know, like that, you know, okay, like I can wrestle with that, you know. And so that's a couple really valuable things that Banks shared with me. That's my 22nd pro fight, and like I'm still learning, you know. So
Yeah, I don't think you ever stop learning, but man, that's a great. I've never really heard it that way. Like losing's supposed to hurt. And like,
Yeah, it should hurt, and you should feel bad about it, and like that. Otherwise, fucking, why would we compete?
yeah,
You know, if it doesn't hurt like this, then what's the point of winning? Like winning wouldn't feel so good, and so. Yeah, I was like, okay, I will. I'm gonna hold on to this feeling, and like I'm gonna work with it and let it mold me. Instead of like trying to just brush it off and act like it didn't happen or that it doesn't matter or it was just a fluke or something like that.
yeah. I mean, it's one of the most important life lessons you can learn. You know, is getting your ass kicked either just in life or legitimately, and I guess in your profession.
Yeah, legitimately getting your ass kicked.
And then, you know, coming back from that is...
it's huge.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
And for being a girl that started this sport because I was afraid of physical confrontation, it's like one of the biggest lessons I've learned is, you know, getting your ass kicked really isn't that bad.
It's not.
It's not the worst thing in the world. And like, there's way worse things. And I feel like, you know, one thing I could take from that fight is like, I'm tough as fuck.
Yeah.
So I went to, she like busted my nose up, and just by the end of the fight, she was like hitting me in the head repeatedly. You know, it was like, I don't even know, the striking differential was probably a fucking record for the flyweight division or something, but I was pretty battered, and I had a black eye and my nose was bleeding, which my nose hardly ever bleeds. I have very like flexible nose, you know, and like, and I'm really tough. Like, just God made me like thick boned, strong boned. Like, I've never really broken anything. I've never broken a bone. I've never had a major injury. I've never had like a major surgery. The only thing I've ever hurt is my big toe. That's not even a lie.
Things,
yeah. So, I remember the UFC sent me to like a nose doctor, like somebody to like an ENT or whatever. And they took an x-ray of my face and they were like, it's perfect. They were like, your nose is just fine.
Just got
I
some
was
bruising.
like, are you fucking serious? I was like, girl, you should have seen the fight. And so I showed her some pictures from it. And she was like, yeah, you wouldn't know that from the way your x-ray looks. She was like, your face is perfect. Like, she looked at my husband who has like a deviated septum, and she was like, now his nose, that's different.
Oh, fuck.
Like, she was like, but you're good. So
Oh, man. So, you have anything coming up? Any fights coming up soon?
So I'm doing Worlds, IBJJF Worlds, December 7th, which is like 4 weeks away. And I've been really wanting to win Worlds at brown belt for a long time. So the last several years, Worlds is always at the end of the year. No-gi Worlds is at the end of the year. And so the last several years, I've been offered a UFC fight like around the end of the year, and I've always been like, okay, I'll do Worlds next year. And then every time I do that, I lose the fucking fight, and I didn't compete at Worlds. And so like, God damn it, this year I'm not doing it. And so they did offer me a fight, but I was like, no, I just want to take this time to train. And
is it the one in Austin?
No, they never tell you where. They'll just offer you an opponent, and then if you accept it, then they tell you where. They'll offer you an opponent and a date, but they never say like where it's going to be. Otherwise, people would just like
handpick.
So I turned down like a fight and just told the UFC like, hey, like I want to do this competition at the end of the year, and then after that, let's talk. So hopefully it'll work out. Like, hopefully I'll be pissed if I lose.
Oh God,
I'll be so furious.
I think you're prepped. You'll be prepared. I remember even you were telling me before the Fit Fest, you're like, shit, I'll even compete in that jiu-jitsu comp. Like, you were hungry, you wanted to do it, and that's usually a pretty good sign.
Yeah,
And,
I feel well prepared for Worlds. Like, there's definitely not a better team that I could be training with jiu-jitsu wise. Like, it is such a blessing to be able to go train with the athletes, not just at Roca, but at the Renzo Gracie Austin, which is a class that's open to the public.
Yeah.
Anybody can go train with John Danaher at Renzo Gracie in Austin, which is fucking amazing.
I'm trying to get him come and do the show too.
Oh yeah, good luck. That would be awesome.
Well, it's just it would be such a unique conversation.
He's incredible.
Yeah,
and so I feel like I'm going to be as well prepared as I can be. Like, my cardio feels like it's on point. My conditioning is good. I did go up a weight class, so like I'll be competing with slightly bigger girls, but I like that too because I've been able to eat throughout my camp, and I don't have to worry about cutting weight. And like, that's really new to me, where I'm like, after training, I'm hungry. I'm like, I can go eat whatever I want. Sweet.
Yeah, those weight cuts seem brutal too. I hear about them all the time, and I'm like.
They can be. For the UFC, that's weigh-ins like the day before. So you have like 36 hours or something to recover from your weight cut, which is really nice. You always have about 24 at least, but sometimes even longer. And
I'm curious about their rehydration clause they have, where you're not allowed to do like IV drips.
Yeah.
Which I find so strange. Like,
yeah,
it's the healthiest approach.
It really, yeah, I know everybody's pretty disappointed when that like went into effect, but.
Well, was that USADA? Because now they're out.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that'll make its way back in.
That's a good question. I think all the rules are going to stay the same. They hired International Drug-Free Sport, like IDFS or whatever it is, International Drug-Free Sport. And so they'll be doing the testing now. They're just going to take up where USADA left off. Okay. And I believe they're keeping all the rules the same. I'm pretty sure. There might even be like some additions. I don't know. But like... Yeah, everybody's pretty disappointed about the IV rehydration clause, but they say it can mask steroid use. It can mask like anabolic use. So,
which, I mean, I don't know. I'm no expert in anabolics, but I've never really heard of an anabolic taking effect or working within the first 24 hours of an IV or something.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea how it works.
Then again, I also don't know shit about anabolics.
Yeah,
so.
I don't either. But I know like we're not allowed to take diuretics because those are like masking agents, and diuretics help you cut weight too. Yeah. And so it's like people have just had to get on board with like doing more cardio, like getting the fat off and cutting less, which is really actually a lot healthier for us.
I just remember seeing the footage of what was her name?
Joanna Jędrzejczyk?
No, she was like one of the first brutal female fighters. Yeah, and she would just pass out. She like almost looked dead.
Yeah.
She's just laying there, stone cold face, and
yeah,
I just was like, that cannot be healthy.
It's not.
Like that cannot be good. Like there's got to be a better way to.
I worked with a woman named Lisa ReGen who's just brilliant, and she taught me a lot about like rehydration and just combat athletes tend to do it so poorly because they want to cut as much weight as possible and then try to rehydrate as much as possible and be as big as possible. And it's like all that fluid, it takes time to get into a cellular level, like, so you can rehydrate and have a bunch of fluid in your tissues and it just comes across as edema instead of like actually rehydrating at a cellular level. And so that can be problematic because, it makes you slow. It makes you sluggish. It really affects your strength. Like there's some crazy statistic out there that like 3% dehydration reduces your strength by like 20%. That's insane. And 3% dehydration is like probably a lot of athletes are going into UFC fights that at least that dehydrated, if not more, because it just takes time to rehydrate and they don't have enough time to rehydrate as much as they dehydrated. But the big deal is the brain health. Yeah. So, it's like you're going into a literal fucking fist fight against some of the best fist fighters in the fucking world. And they're going to hit you in the head as hard as they can. And if your brain doesn't have that fluid around it to protect it, you're going to get knocked out easier. The knockouts are going to be worse. They're going to be more long lasting. The concussions are going to be more severe. Your performance is going to suffer. And she really opened my eyes to a lot of that. It's crazy. Some of the weight cutting practices that people go through and like some of these weight cutting coaches will put their athletes through that's fucking unbelievably dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my start with all the fitness industry and working with the bodybuilding community and just seeing how they would cut down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
And I just was like, that's not, well, one, it's not healthy in general, but it was just insane to me that these hoops people jump through to just try to get that extra, fat off, get that percentage down. And, you'd see them pass out. You'd see them fall down. And, and I'd see it with a lot of fighters too. And it's just, they got to figure out there's got to be another solution. It's not a good long-term plan.
No. And there's some like one fighting championship is doing like hydration tests and they've actually like changed the weight classes. And so that's, I think, very helpful. I think it does change the game in terms of like, and one has some of the best fucking fights I've ever seen.
They're booming right now.
Yeah, their fights are awesome. I think they're the only promotion right now that's really on par with the UFC as far as like excitement of fights, popularity of their fighters. Like, but it's crazy. Like some of these, like there's guys out there that are weight cut coaches.
Oh yeah.
And that's insane because they put,
there's a coach for everything now.
Yeah. I know. And most of them are not qualified.
Yeah, no, they're the worst. They watch some YouTube and they're like, I could do that.
The craziest like weight cutting story ever. when I fought Valentina Shevchenko, I was working with a performance specialist who's like, his whole job is, you know, they test fucking everything. They take blood samples and urine samples and spit samples and stool samples and all this stuff. And they check your gut and your hormones and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. They check everything, you know, and they advise you on how to like make, you know, how to balance everything in your body so that you can have the best performance ever. So I took like all these tests with these guys, and the tests came back and they said, well, you know, your testosterone's a little low because you have Giardia. And like, this is, you know, it's not a big deal. You don't need antibiotics, but we're just going to have you drink some bone broth. And like, to me, Giardia sounds crazy bad. Yeah. I was like, oh, I okay. Like, I don't need antibiotics or whatever. Yeah. And honestly, I didn't even know about it. If they hadn't told me, I wouldn't have really guessed. I felt pretty good. You know, I felt pretty good. They're like, well, you're going to feel even better now. I'm like, oh, wild. And then a few weeks later, I developed an infection called C. diff. And it's an infection in your gut. And again, they were like, no, you don't need antibiotics. We can take care of it after the fight, like whatever. And so I followed their advice. And it turns out that C. diff is very, very fucking serious. Like, it's very serious and it's very contagious. It's super infectious, and it can actually kill people. And so obviously I didn't
just drink bone broth.
Yeah. drink. Yeah, they did. Stupid. They were like, oh, take these supplements. Like, this guy texted me and he's like, yeah, take this supplement. This is what the doctor would give you anyway. And like, just all like, and I don't know, these guys are performance specialists. That's what they do. Yeah. They're testing, you know, they were giving seminars on like gut health and like how to help athletes perform better. And so anyway, I did what they said, and I went through this like horrendous weight cut to fight. This is the saddest part, is that it was to fight Valentina Shevchenko for the UFC championship. And I just didn't know I just didn't understand. And so this gut infection, it not only is it super contagious, but it causes brain fog. It causes anxiety. Like, your gut is connected to everything, which I also didn't fucking really understand that, you know, and they didn't bother to tell me. And it's the only fight in my career where I've been finished. It's the only fight in my career where I got knocked out. It's one of the worst performances I've ever had in my life. And like, you know, looking back, it's like, holy shit, these performance coaches had a duty to fucking tell me about that, and to tell me we should have called that fight off. I never should have fought like that. But I don't know what their deal is. Like, probably because they were excited to have a title contender. They, you know what I mean?
For the title fight.
Yeah, just get to, and I was paying them. It's like, just get to the fucking fight. Just get her through the fight. And
so stupid.
And it's like, what?
And it's the most important fight for you too.
Most important fight of my career.
It's not some easy opponent.
Yeah, she's literally the best in the world. Yeah. So
I met her once at a cell phone place. She was doing like a meet and greet, and you can just tell, like, there's some people that are built different, but
she's an animal, and she's been fighting since she was in the womb, basically. You know, she was born with gloves on, and it was an honor to fight her. Yeah. It really was. It was a supreme honor, and she taught me a lot in that fight. But it's like, I'll never forgive those guys for doing that, because it's like, we could have just postponed the fight. We
so
could have just postponed the fight. Yeah. And like, anyway, afterward, when I started to kind of put the pieces together and find out all this stuff about this infection that I had, it's like,
can't believe you fought with it.
Dude, it's crazy. And then like, so that's like my story about these coaches. They want to work with fighters so bad, because it's like popular to work with fighters right now, and they make their name off of working with fighters. Yep. And
it just that kind of shit bothers me with just the fitness industry in general, is people are willing to shrink down to some low levels just to look credible. Instead of actually becoming credible, they'll do everything in their power to give off this perception, and it's so dangerous, especially when you're playing with someone's health. And I'm so tired of seeing this shit. I see it all the time with, whether it's the bodybuilding coaches out here, or it's just any type of like life coach, which is this new thing, which I can't fucking stand. I'm so mean to them too, because they always come at me with some shit, and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking. You seem more fucked up than I am. So you're chasing a lot of validation.
You know what gets me is like you can talk to these like life coaches, especially breathwork coaches. That's the
new one. Yeah,
that's the new one. And they want to. They're
God.
like, tell me about all your problems. Tell me about what's stressing you out. Well, how do you feel about that? Oh. And then if you tell them something, they're like, I think you need to see a psychologist. It's like, well, then what the fuck am I talking to you for? Like, what is your role exactly if you're not qualified to be fucking giving me any kind of advice? All you're going to tell me is to go talk to a professional. Yeah. I'll just cut out the middleman. You know what I mean? What am I paying you for?
Yeah, I deal with that shit all the time, and I always get these people that are like, come do our breathwork class, this and that. I'm like, dude, I don't want to do your breathwork class because I know it's really just this hidden thing that you're just trying to like, it's almost like culty. It almost feels like a cult. Like you just want a group of yes men. You want everyone to be like all this false positivity, everything's perfect in the world. Now give us $5,000 and we'll tell you that your life's not as bad, and we'll tell you yes to everything you want to hear. And if I want to do breath work, I'll just go with Boss and do the O2 trainer, and do real breath work that will actually benefit me, not have to, basically do ayahuasca.
Yeah, for sure. We teach a lot of breath work at Deep End Fitness, which I think is super, super applicable, but we keep it short, sweet, to the point, and you get to practice it right there in real time and see how it can benefit you through a workout and benefit like how to speed up and slow down your nervous system.
So what is Deep End Fitness? Because I know they have one here. I know you do. You own the one in Houston.
Yeah.
And all I've ever really gotten from it, just because I haven't had a lot of time to look into it, is it's like underwater weight training.
Yeah. So it's
dope.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a really cool program. So there's a lot of components to it, but there's the physical training part of it, which is like, like the conditioning that you get from swimming, the CO2 tolerance that you get from like the breath holds and things like that. So that's like kind of the physical aspect of it. There's the mental aspect of it, where like when you're underwater and you're, the CO2 starts to build up, you start to panic. Like we get to face that and work with it every week, which is a really invaluable tool for like stress reduction and anxiety management. And especially for like competitive athletes or anybody that's in a high performing situation, they need to learn how to deal with those like anxious thoughts and those panicked thoughts and that racing brain that can come up. And so it's a way to face that and deal with it in a safe and controlled setting, where we get to like kind of engineer stress for people so that they can learn how to deal with it. And then
that just seems way more applicable than going to the park with a bunch of people and meditating, doing breath work. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we start every session with some breath work, and we talk about how the breath is kind of like the gas pedal and the brake pedal for like if your body is a car and the nervous system is the engine, then your breath is like the gas pedal and the brake pedal. And so when your nervous system gets really jacked up, whether it's through a hard physical workout or whether it might just be through mental stress or anxiety, like we have tools to help you deal with that so that you can jack down and have your best performance, and also so that you can recover really quickly. So there's a lot of ways that your breath like can control how good of a performance you're having. It can control like how fast you recover physically, and it can also control like your nervous system itself, and so it's really cool to be able to learn those tools, and then we give you a chance to practice it in real time, and so we get a lot of like just any high performer, right? That could be like CEOs, it could be professional athletes, it could be amateur athletes, you know what I mean? Anybody that gets into these situations where it's a high stress environment. Yeah. And it can also be like anybody that is just looking to push themselves. There's, especially in Austin, there's a lot of these like extreme athletes that are always looking for the new thing to do. And I think Deep End Fitness is the new thing to do,
It like, from what you've told me, it sounds awesome, but like I mentioned this a second ago, it sounds applicable to everyday life, because
100%.
World is so stressful now. It's moving so fast that it's so hard to keep up with. And I think when you're put in a position to train that stress, it's so much different than just sitting in a circle and
talking about it.
But when you're stressed out, I can't breathe, I have to get air. But when you train yourself to calm yourself in these high stress situations and things like that, again, the word applying it,
it's
that's so much more beneficial.
It's amazing. It's like, and the
I'll go
cool
do it.
thing,
We'll have to do it.
you should, you would really like it, I think.
We'll shoot one of our reels on it in the community where we highlight like facilities.
Oh my
and
God,
all that stuff.
absolutely. And the program here in Austin is cool because it's really grown. It's a large program. And so there's people of all ability levels, all different swim levels, all different athleticism levels that come in, and they get to work at their own pace. You know what I mean? Or not, I wouldn't say at their own pace, but I would say it's scaled to their level of ability, so that they're pushing themselves just enough that they can deal with that and then be stronger for it. We're not just like kicking people over the edge, you know, like, see ya, and then they panic and have no tools. Like, we're stressing them out a little bit and giving them the tools to deal with it. They grow stronger from that. It's just like lifting weights, right? Like, if you do a deadlift that's too fucking heavy, you're going to blow out your back. You're not going to gain anything from it. You're not even going to be able to do it. But if you start at a weight that is challenging for you and then you let yourself recover, that's how you get stronger. And then you can go back and lift heavier weight and then recover from that, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so that's the idea behind Deep End Fitness, is we give them scalable stress, teach them how to deal with it. And at the same time, they are also getting physically stronger and like mentally stronger. They can work with people of all swim abilities. But the thing about the water is that it brings that stress out of everybody, no matter who you are. And so once you're underwater, at some point, everybody gets that really high CO2 and they start to panic, right? That's what CO2 is like, kind of synonymous with panic, right? It makes you panic. And so having a higher tolerance to CO2 literally reduces anxiety. It reduces like your panic line. You get to push that line back and back and back. And it's just a really cool thing. And it spills over to all aspects of your life. You know, like the common one we talk about is like, are you stuck in traffic and you're like fucking freaking out? And it's like, man, the panic button has been pushed back so far for you now that it's like not even a thing. You ain't stressing about it. Or, you know, going on a podcast, or like speaking publicly, or like you're about to, I don't know, perform at some athletic event, something like that. You just learn how to deal with those nerves and those panicked racing thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
stress,
really unique.
Stress management it's so key nowadays, because like I mentioned before, like the world moves so fast, and, you know, with social media, just the world of media in general, you know, it just feels like no matter how hard we work, it's just trying to keep up. Mm-hmm. And I try super hard to find different outlets to manage stress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And this is one of them. I love doing this. I love coming here every day, getting to talk to cool people and hang out, and then going to different facilities. But then I also need my separate outlets. Yeah. You know, I have to, like, I grew up playing music. So I play music when, you know, I have like a piano at home and I get to jam, or I'll go to the comedy shows, or I'll hang out with the comics and stuff. And working out for me, it's a hobby, but it's actually my like top stress reduction outlet. Like I, you know, because I own a brand called Austin Fitness Community, I'm constantly bombarded with the same question, which is, do you do a lot of like competitions? Do you do this and this? I'm like, I don't compete in anything. I work out to decompress stress, to relax, you know, so I can sleep at night. And it's just a great way for me to unload, you know, the week's stressors.
That's another cool thing about Deep End Fitness, is that it's a supplemental program. And so they're not asking you to go do it every day or to like learn a whole new sport. You don't need to learn a bunch of new skills. It's literally once a week, or like you could go once every 2 weeks, and you're going to see benefit from that. And so that's super appealing to like athletes, especially in the fight community, because they do like 72 workouts in a week. They're like, I don't have time to add on more. Yeah. And I'm like, you probably have an hour though. You know, you probably have an hour once a week, and you can even go do it on a rest day because it's so low impact. It's like, you know, it's like working out on the moon. It's like really low impact.
It is, yeah.
So, like
That's how astronauts train.
Yeah, it's amazing. We actually had a doctor from NASA come into our classes in Houston, and she loved it. She's a aerospace and like medical doctor. I don't remember her like official title, but she was a doctor for astronauts, and she was like, this is sweet. Yeah. This is awesome.
That's so dope. Yeah. I'll definitely go check it out. Maybe I'll go out to Houston. I'll go with you.
Yeah.
We'll do it out there.
We would love to have you out there.
Fun.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to travel more. I'm going to New York next week. And I'm going for this Stronger New York Expo. My buddy Kenny owns it. And I was going to actually do their workout classes.
Cool.
I never do that shit, but I'm trying to like, you know, challenge myself a little more, get more involved in stuff. And so One question I have, because, you're saying you're one of like the pioneers of female fighting, that you've been doing it prior to it, Ronda really exacerbating the process and the popularity of female fighters. So what advice would you give to like an inspiring female fighter that's like looking to make their mark?
Dude, consistency.
That's
it. Yeah, you have to be really consistent. And like champions live by a schedule. Like they are ruled by their schedule, and you have to be really consistent. Like there was a really famous coach named Robert Follis. And he had a formula. It was C over T equals R. And it's just consistency over time equals results. There's nothing to replace consistency. Nothing, especially not in the fight game. And so it's a busy schedule. Like people have to work often as they're coming up. Even when I was in the UFC, like early in my UFC career, I still had a day job. I was I was like teaching boxing classes at Tidal and like cleaning gyms, cleaning houses, like anything to kind of make ends meet, because there's not a lot of money in the fight game, unless you're like top 5%, but if you're coming up, you're going to be broke, you're going to be tired, you're not going to have a lot of time. And so just living by a schedule and making sure that you stick to it so that you can be consistent is it's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Does the UFC not allow fighters to get sponsorships?
They do and they don't.
Really? It's
kind of complicated. They have sponsors that sponsor the UFC, and then those sponsors will pick certain UFC athletes that they particularly want to sponsor. So that's like, I think, how like Budweiser works and how Monster works, and like Prime Hydration. Yeah. So they'll pick certain superstar athletes that they want, and then those athletes will represent them. We can get other sponsors. We're just not allowed to like promote them like in the cage or during fight week. Yeah. So we can put them on our social media. We can like talk about them on our social.
It's just fight day.
But it's just, anything that the UFC films, we're not allowed to have our personal sponsors in anything that the UFC films.
That makes sense. Because, I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I keep meeting, whether it's the UFC fighters active or retired, and then I also work with all these companies, and they're always like, hey, can I work with so-and-so? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what the rules are with the UFC. And because, I always hear the same thing about fighter pay and this and that, and I just don't have any knowledge on it. So I was curious, actually.
Well, if you find any sponsors that want to sponsor Deep End Fitness, let me know, because we would love to have some sponsors that we could promote, like with Deep End Fitness and workout deals with them. Like that would go a long way, I think. And Deep End Fitness is blowing up. Like, it is becoming really big nationwide, and every time I turn around, there's more and more and more opening up across the nation. And so
I know it's fun. We can make them out at the Fit Fest.
Yeah, that would have been cool. And they just did the Rogue Invitational out here too. They're a big part of that. And they're going to be huge. They're big now. They're going to be huge soon. So honestly, if there's sponsors that are looking to get their name out there and be a part of something that's growing right now before it gets really big, now's the time. So definitely get in on that Deep End Fitness action, because that's where it's at, really.
Yeah. Well, I'll include their tag in like the bios of all these when we release the show and stuff.
Oh yeah, cool.
Put them in there, and I'll reach out to some of the people I work with that sponsor this show and other stuff.
Yeah,
and
cool.
So I just remember geeking out laughing when I was at the expo at the Fit Fest, and every time I saw you had the biggest smile. You look like you're having so much fun.
It was a blast. I was having a blast. Like, all the booths were awesome. All the vendors and like people running the booths were sweet. The arm wrestling guys were so cool. Yeah. One of my favorite things was the like the medieval fighting.
The armor combat.
That, yes. And so I started talking to one of the wives of the fighters, and she lives in Houston, and she lives next door to Matt Schnell, who's like a buddy of mine who also fights in the UFC. And like just a big, like, it's such a small world, but that was one of the coolest things to see. Those guys were badass.
They were beating the shit out of each other.
Dude, they were awesome.
I
couldn't leave. I was just watching, and that was probably my favorite part.
It was the biggest attraction. You know what's crazy is it almost didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah, we actually had like about a week to coordinate with them. We had reached out to them in the beginning when we started like planning everything, and they were all on board. They were really cool. And then we just had not heard from our contact that we, when we're trying to put it together. And I had no idea what it was. Like, I just heard people kept saying, hey, you should get Armor Combat there. You should get Armor Combat. I'm like, okay. So I reached out, found the guy that does it, and he was all on board. And so we're getting closer and closer, and, we had to get the equipment to build their arena. And, I'm trying to plan it, and just no one's responding. And I was about to drive up to Dallas, which is where they're based out of. But fortunately, Rob, one of my partners for the event, he got a hold of someone and found out that there was like this big miscommunication. One of the guys that was our point of contact had something happen, and he had like lost our info. So yeah, we had about 6 days to get them all together, and they pulled it together. They killed it.
Awesome.
And
I'm so glad they did.
Yeah, it ended up being our biggest attraction there. And
I
I think the most fun for me was sitting ringside at the fights with you and Boss.
Oh yeah, that was super fun. The fights were good too. Like, yeah.
The girls, those.
Yeah.
I just remember Boss leans in my ear and he's like, "We got a slugfest."
Yeah.
And the girls probably had the most exciting fight.
Yeah. The female fighting is awesome now. It's so big. People really appreciate it so much more than like they used to.
Yeah. I used to feel weird when I'd watch it. I'm like, I almost felt bad, but now I appreciate it from like an athletic standpoint where I don't really view it any different than when I'm watching men fight, where I'm just like, here's two competitors that we're going to see the best skill.
The game has changed a lot. Like, really a lot about female fighting. But yeah, there was a lot of cool booths. I like the axe throwing too, and
that's my man Greg.
Yeah, that was cool. And yeah, just the whole deal was really sweet. So I'm definitely looking forward to next year.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy you came out. I was so nervous. My biggest thing is I wanted to make it something fun for everyone, but also kind of different. And a lot of these fests are the same, but one of the things I wanted the guests that were coming to, I wanted them to experience it too. I meet a lot of these guests that they go and they do meet and greets and stuff, and then they just jet. They're like, I just sat there for how many hours? And so I told all the guests, go walk around, go have fun. Like, you'll meet everyone while you're doing your thing, but at least at some point come to your booth. And yeah, I remember
that was a good way to do it.
Yeah. To me, it's just, to be in a position of control to dictate those things, that was important to me, was to make sure that everyone enjoyed it, not just the spectators. So yeah, it was fun seeing like, Callum and Frank, who were the bodybuilding guests, walking around, hanging out with everyone. And then I look over and Legends Boxing had a punching bag booth, and there's Boss punching it, and then he's taking turns with some little kid. And to me, that was way more memorable than if we just had tables with
hi, I'm Boss, nice to meet you. All right, see you later. No, he's like, and he's good to get out in the crowd and like, fire everybody up and be super personable. So everybody likes Boss.
Yeah, everyone did me a huge favor. I'm so appreciative of it. Everyone helped me out enormously, and it was a big success. Next year, we're looking at making it a multi-day.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And we're going to add a lot more stuff. We'll keep the fights. And I think we announced it. I'm not sure yet. I'm not going to say anything, but I can't remember. But on that note, did I leave anything out? Pretty sure we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate everything you do for me and coming on. And
oh yeah, no problem.
I'm glad you're in town, and we'll definitely run it back in the future.
Let's do it.
Are you going to be in town for the fights, the UFC fights that are here?
Yeah.
So we'll have to go there. I've never been to a UFC fight.
Are you going to the ones in Austin?
I want to.
The UFC puts on the best show.
Yeah.
They really do. Like, it is worth your while to go.
I was trying to go last time they were here, and I kept bugging Claudia Gadea.
Oh, yeah.
And but it was like there was so much happening that it just didn't work out. But
dude, the UFC puts on the best. They have the best production value by far. Like, no matter where you're sitting in the arena, it's an awesome show. It's super entertaining. Like, yeah.
We'll have to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's, I want to say it's like December 11th or something.
December 2nd.
Second? Okay, yeah. I'll be here. So
hell yeah.
We'll put that together.
And it's a super good fight card.
Yeah.
It is a banging fight card. So, yeah, don't
Austin
miss
shows up. I mean, that was a crazy weekend the last time they did it. So.
Oh, really? I didn't go last time they came to Austin. I was bummed. So this time I was like, definitely requested tickets.
Yeah. I'll figure something out. But we'll make it happen. And then, gosh, these fast twitches are.
I know.
Making me burp like crazy. But on that note, I do appreciate you coming on. We'll run it back here in the future.
Right on.
And we'll take it out from here. So, John.
Right on.